So the culture that I'm choosing to describe for my privilege would have to be being a straight Mexican American in Southern California. This would definitely attribute to the diversity that we have here in Southern California, and because we have such a huge population of Mexican Americans. Um, I would definitely say that it is a huge advantage because I do not feel the discrimination as large as I do in other areas that I've been to, or even heard of possibly from what other people have experienced. It's definitely a privilege being a Mexican American here in Southern California because of the opportunities I gain and because I am able to interact with such a diverse group of people. For example, I was working in a preschool, and the parents and the children there were a lot easier to form connections with and a lot easier to communicate with because I was able to speak Spanish, um, while at the same time they were able to gain the opportunity to learn a little bit of English from me, and it was nice having that back and forth communication without it being so much of a struggle as it were if I were to only speak English. There is also the part where I have the same heritage as they do, the same culture, the same values, and so that makes them feel a lot more comfortable as opposed to some of my coworkers who only spoke English and who were of a white ethnicity. So that would definitely be a privilege. It's also a privilege being Mexican American because even while out on the streets, I'm able to communicate with people. When I'm going into stores, I am able to greet people, direct people, kind of sort of help them out if they aren't able to speak English, and it's nice to be able to feel like I'm a useful member of society in that way. Um, it's a lot to do with the familiarity as well, being able to be comfortable with those people. Um, I would have to say that it's also an advantage as far as getting a job, going into school. In a way, I'm filling in this quota that they need for diversity. So while in a way I don't like it, it's also a great opportunity for me to be able to fulfill that quota, and I could possibly be chosen over someone of another race. However, being Mexican American can also be a disadvantage because of the way people view me. I'm seen as a Mexican, so sometimes automatically they think she only speaks Spanish. Oh, she didn't bother to learn English. That I'm not as much of a useful member of society as others are. Which is very hard to... It's very hard to take that in because I don't see it as much as I do with some other ethnicities. And so I know I have that advantage of not being discriminated as much just because of how close to the border we are. But I do know that there is a disadvantage in that as well because someone could think I'm an illegal immigrant, or I'm here taking up one of their jobs, or that I simply only speak Spanish and that I didn't bother to learn English. And it's very hard to understand why someone would want to discriminate against someone else that's coming into into the U.S. to try and learn, regardless if I was born here or not. So it's kind of a disadvantage when it comes to the opportunities as well as getting a job and going to school, because sometimes Mexicans are viewed as these lazy people who don't want to do anything. So they don't want to hire someone who's lazy. They don't want to they don't want to fund someone that's not going to be doing the work, or that could possibly just drop out like they use statistics to try and prove. So that's very disheartening to think about. But I know that there is an advantage to it as well. As well as that, it can be a disadvantage being Mexican American because people within my own culture that only speak Spanish or that are more involved with the Mexican culture see me as either being Americanized or just whitewashed, and I have people tell me this all the time because I don't know Spanish as well as they do, and I don't understand my culture as well as they do. And it's very hard because when I am trying to learn about it, I'm not given the same opportunity, or I'm kind of laughed at, and it's very hard to try and get in touch with my culture when you're being discriminated against by your own culture. So that's definitely a barrier, trying to involve myself more in my culture. As well as that, it's also very hard at times because I do speak the majority of English more than I do Spanish, and sometimes I can't form full sentences, or I don't fully understand what they're saying if they're speaking too fast for me. So it does kind of prevent me from the possibility of getting a job because they want someone who's fully bilingual as opposed to someone who can just kind of get by. I did mention as well that I am straight, which is definitely a privilege all across the board, no matter what race you are, but especially in Mexican American culture where we're coming into America where it's so much more progressive. However, coming from Mexico or more traditional families, it's not as open for you to speak about. I did have a sister who came out as being a lesbian, and my mother, while she still kept in contact with her, it was very hard for her to understand that part of her life and that lifestyle. However, being here in America, we're so much more open about it, we're more progressive about it, we are moving forward with it, and so I definitely see that there is an advantage to being a straight Mexican American living in Southern California without the opportunities I gain here as opposed to anywhere else that I would in the country. And I definitely can't complain about it because it's nice knowing that I have the diversity in myself. But at the same time, like anyone else, there does come disadvantages. Thank you.